My name is Dr. Ivy Brannon. I'm a naturopathic doctor here in New York City. Today we're going to talk about anxiety and how it can affect the menstrual cycle. In these crazy, uncertain times, a lot of us are feeling a lot more anxious, a lot more stressed, and the unfortunate reality is that women actually are twice as likely to experience anxiety than men. And stress and anxiety can really impact our menstrual cycle. So whether you're not getting your period, maybe you're having more frequent, heavier, painful periods, or having bleeding in between periods, it could possibly be stress and anxiety. And a lot of my female patients right now have been reaching out to me because there's been major changes in their cycles, and we're trying to get them back on track. So let's first look at the HPA Axis, which we've been talking about in some of my other videos, and that stands for the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. Well, in this case, we also have another axis that we want to be concerned about, and that's the HPG axis, and that's the hypothalamus pituitary gonadal axis. So what happens is, during times of stress, our HPA axis is activated, and corticotrophin releasing hormone is released. Well, when that hormone is released, it actually signals to the hypothalamus to stop releasing gonadotrophin releasing hormone. And that hormone is responsible for signaling to the pituitary gland to release LH, luteinizing hormone. And luteinizing hormone is very important when it comes to ovulation for two reasons. First, LH signals to the ovaries to start producing androgens, which are our male hormones, which are eventually converted to estrogen. And the surge in LH coming from the pituitary gland signals ovulation in response to the elevation in estrogen. So you can see how important LH is to ovulation. Well, ovulation is very important for our menstrual cycle. So if you're not experiencing a period, you're most likely not ovulating. Or if you're not ovulating, if you are quote unquote getting a period, you might be noticing that it's heavier, more painful, and comes more frequent. So typically under 20 days. So why is that happening is, so if we don't ovulate, our body isn't going to increase progesterone. And it's the progesterone that basically helps to maintain the uterine lining, that the estrogen, which actually I should probably show you. This is one of my favorite pictures that a lot of my patients like. So, the first part of the cycle, our lining starts building up in response to estrogen, and then after ovulation, progesterone comes in and helps to support that lining. And then if you had gotten pregnant, it would support the pregnancy. So without the progesterone, if the lining had gotten built up in that first half, you're gonna just see a breakthrough bleeding, a heavier cycle. And another thing that happens specifically during stress and anxiety is with the HPA axis being activated, we're gonna be producing more cortisol. And we actually use progesterone to produce cortisol. So why that's also, again, significant. So if we're not producing, or we're not having an increase in progesterone in response to ovulation, and then we're also using a lot of it for producing cortisol, naturally what's going to happen is estrogen dominance. And we often think of, estrogen dominance must mean I have too much estrogen. Well, it's more that you have too much estrogen in comparison to progesterone. So even if you had normal, even subnormal estrogen levels, if your progesterone level is very, very low, you're going to have symptoms of estrogen dominance. And so that could be, again, more frequent, heavier, painful periods, and that could even lead to things like fibroids, endometriosis, and fertility problems. So now we can kind of see a little bit how stress and anxiety play with the menstrual cycle. Interestingly enough, is that with that dysregulation of the menstrual cycle, that also can affect our mood and our emotions. And the reason is that both estrogen and progesterone have an impact on one of our neurotransmitters, specifically GABA. So GABA is a neurotransmitter that makes us feel more calm. And in fact, actually, that's how alcohol and benzodiazepines work. They work very similar to GABA. And progesterone helps to support GABA versus estrogen does the opposite. Though we still need both hormones, you can see if you're not having enough progesterone, chances are you could start feeling more anxious. It's another reason why progesterone can actually be very useful for sleep, in fact. And so again, we want to make sure that you're producing the progesterone, one, because you're ovulating, and that you're not so stressed that you're using all your progesterone to make cortisol. So what can we be doing instead? First, definitely want to get really great stress management on board. So whether that's mindfulness-based activities, things like meditation, yoga. I'm a real big fan of breath work. I feel it's very accessible. So I do lead a lot of my patients through breath work. And I've even started doing what I call a breathing circle. It's a live feed on Instagram at 8 a.m. Things like journaling can also be good, talking to a friend, therapy, reframing exercises. Exercise in general can be really good for stress and anxiety, with one caveat. So if you've seen some of my other videos, high impact exercise unfortunately increases cortisol. And again, we don't want so much cortisol dysregulation because that's not going to be very beneficial. Also, you have to be careful with the amount of exercise and the duration. Doing too much exercise can also negatively impact the menstrual cycle. Looking at diet, because I always love to look at nutrition. So a lot of the recommendations that I would make for stress and anxiety in general when it comes to eating are also beneficial for the menstrual cycle. So specifically, one, you want to make sure that you're getting good quality protein. I really like eggs, and I'll show you. So one of the reasons that I love eggs is because it's a great source of cholesterol, and cholesterol is actually the precursor to all our hormones. So again, we want to make sure that we have enough female hormones. Fresh fruits and vegetables, healthy fats, and some carbohydrate. And I usually will recommend starchy vegetables. And the reason why carbohydrates are really important is that we need them actually for our menstrual cycle. And then another thing that often patients will ask me, well, what about intermittent fasting? And I think that's a really great question. It definitely has its merits and it can be very useful, but unfortunately not so useful in this case. The reason being is that intermittent fasting can actually increase cortisol, and this is the last time we want cortisol to be increased. And then the last thing I might recommend is adaptogens. So adaptogens are herbs that help to support our adrenal glands, and my favorite ones are rhodiola and ashwagandha. And then other two herbs that could also be beneficial, specifically more of what I call like a nervine, so kind of a calming, would be lavender or lemon balm. So hopefully you found that helpful. Again, my name is Dr. Ivy Brannon. I'm a naturopathic doctor here in New York City. Love working with women and helping women achieve their optimal state of hormonal balance. Have a wonderful day.